Commercials have not been anything we're interested in. Let's keep going here. Elliot Friedman has been kind enough to join us.
They've given us the freedom.
His report.
We don't need no stinking commercials.
Although if you want to have put a title sponsor on the show, we'll take it. Elliot Friedman joining us here on we'll take it here on Tim and Sid. Frage, first off, you're reporting with Chris Johnson last week on this. You set the table for us. Tremendous job on that. I know we say that a bunch of times, and you're like, enough with that, you guys. We don't have the kind of relationship. We just want to give you the compliment. So great job on that. What is your feeling today, Frage? All the conversations you've had, texts from GMs, this and that. What is your general feeling?
Well, I think it's a nice day of news. There's no question about that. We kind of know what the playoff format is going to be if they come back and play. I think obviously there's still things to be worked out, receding versus bracketing, best of 7, best of 5, a couple of things here and there still have to be figured out, but there's still a lot of work to do. I mean, there's still a lot of details out there, and we're still unsure of if we could play, and that's I'm happy to talk about the playoffs, the matchups. I'm happy we have something to talk about. It's a fun day of news, but there's still a lot of work that needs to get done here.
Yeah, it's funny as I'm allowing this to marinate, Elliot, and we've kind of gone basically commercial-less for the entire show. We had Gary Bettman on, we had Donald Fear on, Brian Burke was talking to us. But as I'm allowing this to marinate, it just seems to me like this was smart from the NHL. There's no date set. The health and science could get in front of this and stop it before it ever gets started. This, to me, was a smart PR move by the NHL to lay out what their playoff format would be without really cementing down anything here.
I think the thing is, like, to me, it's dumb to say dates.
Correct.
Like because if you're late on that date, it's all of a sudden oh no, this is a disaster. Cancel everything.
Right.
And so by not setting a date, you at least say, you know what, we're not giving everybody a target here. And, I think that besides it changes every day. Like we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, we're learning still so much about this. And, there's still things that have to get worked out. Like the commissioner's doing his Zoom call right now with the deputy commissioner, Bill Daley. And they just talked about how the league is going to be responsible for testing. They're estimating 25,000 to 30,000 tests they're going to need, and it's going to go into the millions of dollars. And that's interesting, and it's confirmation of what I think a few of us thought. But, it tells you what the economics of this are. Is that going to satisfy the players? Are they going to be comfortable with that? What are the economics going forward going to be out of this? Are the players going to feel there's enough of a financial payoff for them to come back to play? Are they going to be comfortable with their health if they come back to play? I mean, it looks like we've solved one problem here, and that's what it's going to look like. And now we have to start looking at some of the other things that we have to get through.
Elliotte Friedman here on Tim and Sid on Sportsnet, Sportsnet 360, Sportsnet Radio Network, and Sportsnet590.ca. Frege, is there currency in being first here if you're the NHL, or did it just work out that way?
Well, I think, you get buzz. There's no question about it. Like, why did the league want to do the draft in early June? Because they wanted the buzz, right? Like, everybody saw how much buzz the NFL got with their draft. It's a little bit different because I think more people know those players than they know the NHL players. But look at your show today is wall-to-wall NHL. You had Bettman on, you had Fear on, you had me on, and you had and you had Berkey on. And that's good publicity for the NHL. I'm looking at my Twitter feed in the States, and on NBC they had Bettman on, they had Fear on, and now they're doing it. And my Twitter feed is all full of NHL news.
Correct.
Like, that's good. Like, they get some positive PR out of this today, and people are now going to start talking about the matchups. And we're all gamblers, right? We see them talking about, okay, what are the odds for the playoff series? Oh, you don't get your 50-1 whoever makes the playoffs yet, unless they're in a playoff series and they actually win it, a play-in series and they actually win it. Like, all of this stuff creates buzz, and that's why I think it's a smart thing to do.
All right. Of the hard news, Elliotte Friedman, who is joining us from Sportsnet and Hockey Night in Canada, what was your biggest takeaway? Like, Gary Bettman suggested to us that the NHL season could start as late as January for next year, and said, could we start with a winter classic? Anything's possible. We also asked him about the players who weren't comfortable restarting hockey and what would happen to them. And he said, we'll take it on a case-by-case basis, but we expect players who are able-bodied to be playing. Is there one takeaway that you've heard that has raised the Spockian eyebrow of Elliotte Friedman?
Well, I think, I think there's a couple of things that were in your interview that were newsworthy. The thing about the Canadian border, that was the first time I've heard really somebody from the NHL come out and say that this is a problem. The players quietly have said it's a problem, but every time I looked into it, there seemed to be confidence that it would get worked out. Today, when I heard the commissioner talk to you, it's the first time anyone's come out and publicly and said, at least hinted that this may not get worked out to our satisfaction. That is big news, because I think the league and the players have discussed that one should be in Canada. But if there's a 14-day quarantine, that's not going to happen. So that's interesting. I think the other news today that I thought was really interesting was the lottery, because I think we were all trying to figure out how that was going to happen. And we heard some rumblings in the last couple of days how that could work. And now that I've actually heard the way that they're going to do it, I think it actually makes sense. You do your lottery, and if a team that's in the play-in wins it, you wait until after the play-ins are over to figure out who those spots are. So can you imagine if you're in the lottery, or if you're one of those 8 teams, and you're either playing to go to the playoffs, or one of you could potentially lose and get the first overall pick? It's pretty fascinating.
That's a disaster. Like, the Leafs get the first overall pick. It doesn't make any sense to me. You have a shot at the Stanley Cup. Yeah, you have a shot at the Stanley Cup.
What if you don't make the top 16? You would have a shot at the top pick.
But you're not buying half a lottery ticket. Like, you are in the Stanley Cup raffle. Like, you are in it.
Yeah, but 24 teams are in
Ottawa's.
It
well, because of the circumstance. I understand.
But Ottawa still has the best. Ottawa didn't lose their odds. Ottawa still got great odds.
But there are teams with 6% odds of winning the entire thing that would be in the 8 that lose in the play-in round. Like, that to me is madness. Like, why don't you just not leave it at the 7 teams that aren't part of this? You're telling me you have a shot at the Stanley Cup, and you also have a shot at the first overall selection, Alexis Lafreniere. That to me is a bridge too far in this. I can't.
I got to tell you, I actually thought I would hate what they came up with the lottery, but I actually don't think this is too bad, because in a normal year, 16 teams don't have a shot at the lottery. In this, the most abnormal of abnormal years, 16 teams won't have a shot at the lottery.
Right.
And the other part of this is if you're the 5 seed, Sid, and you lose to a 12 seed, right? Like, you've been screwed because you're not even playing in the first round. You lose in a best of 5. Now there might be some glimmer of a consolation prize, even if it is 1%.
So we're fine with the Leafs getting Alexis Lafreniere. Everyone here on this call is fine with that? I'm asking. I'm asking for a friend.
What about the Habs?
One of my buddies says to me, he says, you know what's going to happen? He says, the Leafs are going to win the Stanley Cup, and then you can't have a parade.
Yeah. Montreal's already said they're not having a parade. They've already gone down that road. No, listen, I think what we're all saying here collectively is the discussions are going to begin about how, imperfect some of this is. But I think collectively we're all in the same boat of, I'd rather have this discussion than the one Tim and I was having a month and 2 weeks ago, which was basically nothing. So I'm fine with disagreeing with people. I'm fine with the debates. I'm good with it. I'm good with it.
At least we're having a sports debate.
Yeah.
Correct.
Elliot Friedman joining us here on Tim and Sid. Elliot, what's the biggest question that they have to tackle? I mean, I know that it'll be testing and health and safety and making sure everyone's okay, but like there seems to me like there are a bunch of very big hurdles that we have to get over to get to playing just this season. What do you think the biggest hurdle outside of making the players feel comfortable with health and safety will be?
Well, you're right. I think that's health and safety is number one, and I think after that is probably going to be the economics of everything. New CBA / cushioning of the escrow. The players aren't getting paid from here on in. This is playoff time. They're competing for something that is really meaningful, the Stanley Cup, but there are financial implications to all this. And I know that people don't like really hearing that, but I mean, that's happening to everybody. So I think after the health, I think it's, what's going to happen to ease the burden that the players have to bear. And the owners bear a lot of that too. I mean, their businesses are getting crushed as well. So I think that all of that, the economic challenge and how to make sure that both sides feel like they're getting a benefit to playing, I think that's going to be the next challenge after health.
Elliot Friedman, Hockey Night in Canada, here on Tim and Sid, the day where Gary Bettman puts out not exactly a finalized plan, but a thorough enough plan for a 24-team playoff system to get everyone's juices flowing to a certain extent as we sit here and wait for live sports to come back. Fried, where do you think they'll land on the reseeding / bracket issue? What would the players like?
That's a great question. The players want the reseeding. The players want the reseeding. The league wants the bracketing. They're also still debating about the 4 of 7. The commissioner said today that we know the Stanley Cup final and the semifinal will be 4 of 7. And before that, there's a debate about 3 or 5 or 4 of 7. And also, I think there's this whole thing about exactly how it works with the top 4 teams, how that's all going to work. Like, there are teams and players who feel very strongly that the regular season deserves great weight. That's why Carolina and Tampa both voted against it. I mean, they felt that the regular season meant something. And, and I will tell you, I think there is a chance that the league concedes on the reseeding. I do think that's possible because it is a format people are used to, but there's no guarantee on that.
Elliot Friedman joining us here on Tim and Sid. Last one from me, Fried. And sometimes when we have Gary Bettman or Donald Fear on, you're trying to weigh whether or not you'll get an answer on a question with the importance of asking the question. And I feel like I may have swung and missed on this one because I wasn't sure if I would get the answer. What happens? Do we know what happens if a player tests positive or, God forbid, more than one player tests positive on one team?
Well, on their Zoom interview, which is going on just as we're on right now, they reiterated something that they have said is that one positive test will not mean the end of the playoffs.
Right.
I think what we don't know, Tim, is what's the line?
Yeah.
Like if one team has 5 players test positive, like I'll tell you the word that the word I'm getting is that they're talking about 28 skaters per team. Okay.
Okay.
And I don't think that maybe I think you have 2 or 3 goalies or whatever. You'll probably have at least 3, but. If 5 guys, let's say for argument's sake, if 5 guys come down with COVID, and God hope it doesn't happen, but you'd still have 23 skaters, say. You can still field a team. But if 5 guys from one team come down with it, like, is that going to knock out a whole team? And that's what you don't want.
Right.
But that's the thing we don't know the answer to yet, Tim, is what is the line? What is too much? But they have reiterated that one positive test is not going to shut this all down. And you guys are both soccer guys. And one of the things that I think we're learning is watch what every sport does. And in soccer, when they've had positive tests, they haven't shut down everything. So I think we're all trying to figure out where the line is.
Fried, the other thing we've seen with what Germany's doing soccer-wise is when there have been positive tests, we know about them. And let's be honest here. This is not a league that has been always frank with you about what injuries are, especially in the postseason. Are they under any type of responsibility to tell people, yes, X player is not playing in Game 6 of this Western Conference final due to a positive COVID test? Do they have to tell us that? Or will our imaginations just run amok?
Well, if you take a look at how this has happened throughout the pandemic, as far as we know, I think there have been 5 positive tests, and they mentioned them all. They reported all the ones I heard of. Now, they didn't mention names. People didn't want their names mentioned for privacy reasons, but we did hear about the cases, and everybody was told about them. So I think one thing we're learning is if there's a positive test somewhere, you hear about it, although you might not get the name. I've got to think, though, Sid, if a player doesn't play because of COVID in the playoffs while 12 teams are together, you're going to hear about it. I can't imagine how they can keep that private.
By the way, the Leafs sent their first-round pick to Carolina in the Patrick Marleau deal, you don't have to worry about that one.
But it's protected.
All right.
Oh, yes, it is. Dun, dun, dun.
Attaboy,
Fried, you should really become a hockey insider.
If the Leafs pick is in the top 10 in 2020, the Canes would receive Toronto's 2021 first-round pick instead.
All right.
Attaboy, Free.
Still in play, Fried.
Attaboy, Free.
Still game ready. Game ready. 2 months, game ready, Elliot. Game ready. Listen, Fried, we love you. Again, great reporting on this with Chris. You guys were fantastic. And it set a nice little foundation for kind of what happened today in terms of hockey fans and the public. And let's talk again soon. Thank you, brother.